The iPhone 16 Pro Max is, well, another iterative upgrade. However, I've been using it for the last 2 weeks, and while there's things that I think could be improved upon, like the touch responsiveness causing issues with the keyboard and the lackluster camera control, I'm actually a huge fan of this phone. I think there's a few areas in which Apple actually excels. Build quality, app optimization, video quality, and the integration amongst other devices like a MacBook, for example. And all of these things together have made my iPhone experience far more enjoyable than I'd expected. And I think it's safe to say that after 2 weeks with the 16 Pro Max, I'm pretty happy. So yeah, as far as the design and the build quality goes, well, it looks like every other iPhone that's released in the last little while, except for the bezels and the thickness of the side rails. Despite the 16 Pro Max being physically larger this year with a 6.9-inch display, I thought the iPhone would be unwieldy and too big, and I was tempted to go with the regular Pro since aside from battery and display size, not much is different. However, I'm actually glad that I didn't. Yes, the 16 Pro Max is bigger, and yes, you do feel it, but the comfort hasn't changed much. I'm still able to maneuver this phone one-handed like I was with the 15 Pro and the 14 Pro Max and so on. And because of the curved corners, it doesn't really dig into your palm and make the phone feel more substantial than it is like the S24 Ultra. And also thanks to iOS 18 and now having the freedom to move your icons anywhere on the home screen, my apps I use frequently are much more accessible at the bottom of the display. Same thing with the control center. For the trade-off in size, you're given a much larger battery, which we will talk about later, and one of the best displays that I've seen in a smartphone. It's 120 Hz at 460 ppi, and it has a rated peak brightness of 2000 nits in HDR. That being said, I actually have used this phone side by side with the S24 Ultra outdoors, and I found this display to be a little bit brighter, and it stayed brighter without dimming as often due to that new graphene cooling layer. Though one of the things about this phone that ruins the experience for me, or at least kind of kills the new feeling, is camera control. I mean, I don't know what Apple was thinking, to be honest. The position is intended for both landscape and portrait, but it doesn't seem to do either justice. On the Max, I have to stretch my index finger very far, almost blocking the entire right side of the display when in landscape, and the functionality is quite limited because of this. And when in portrait, I find it just awkward on the thumb, and I can't quite get the half press and zoom down. This is one of those things that leaves me shaking my head in confusion, because at the end of the day, this is Apple, and typically when they implement something, they do a really good job, but with this button, or camera control, I don't think this went through enough testing. It's also quite difficult to get a good shot with camera control because honestly, a lot of the times you need too much force to press this button, which in turn kind of gives your phone a little bit of a shake. It's honestly just kind of a mess. Speaking of camera control though, one of the toughest choices with the iPhone 16 Pro Max and the other iPhone 16 series iPhones is finding a case that protects it. But look no further because this is the Spigen Ultra Hybrid T with MagFit plus camera control. It's the best case that I've come across for the iPhone. It's a minimalistic, transparent case equipped with MagSafe for all of your Apple ecosystem accessories such as charging docks, and its crystal clear finish allows you to appreciate the design and color of your new iPhone. Though this case is special because rather than making a cutout for the camera control button and creating a point of ingress or an area of compromise, Spigen's created their own button cover that not only looks and feels great, but it has no impact on functionality at all. I've been using this case for the last week now, and I've had some accidents, but the case and the phone have held up like nothing's ever happened. I have the white transparent version, but you can get it in graphite or frost black to better suit your aesthetic, and personally, I think it's a no-brainer for the iPhone 16 Pro Max. I'll leave a link to the case in the description below so that you can pick up the Ultra Hybrid T, and thank you to Spigen for sponsoring this portion of the video. Anyways, camera control is kind of where my gripes with this device start to end. And sure, I can be nitpicky and say that I'd love to see 65 or 90 watt charging versus the 30 watts included with the 16 Pro Max, or that I'd like to see some form of multitasking in iOS, because I do actually find that beneficial to me. But this is actually such an impressive device, it isn't even funny. So this is using the new A18 Pro SoC, and in my last video, I talked about not quite noticing the difference, and while this is still relatively true, I just came back from a trip in Vermont New Hampshire, and Salem in Massachusetts, and throughout my entire trip there, I took a ton of raw photos. And what I've noticed whilst editing these photos in Lightroom Mobile, an app that I frequent, was that it's much more responsive and the export time is much quicker, and the overall experience within the app is the best that I've seen on a smartphone. Also, when using the previous 15 Pro Max, the phone got very hot to the touch when using Lightroom and other demanding applications. But with the 16 Pro Max, this phone's able to stay a lot more cooler and in turn doesn't throttle as much, making these longer sessions possible without also taking a huge hit to the battery life. And the battery and the overall efficiency of this device is something that I've noticed is much improved in pretty much every single way. Like I said, it's not dimming as much when outdoors, it's staying cooler. The phone's also able to handle longer play sessions in games like Warzone Mobile, and on this trip, for example, when I was taking tons of photos, I was able to get through an entire day plus headed into the afternoon with some battery left over. And I think the overall battery, the efficiency, and the performance of the 16 Pro Max is much better than I expected, and I've actually been very happy with how this phone has been holding up, because at the end of the day, this is a really stark contrast from just last year. It seems like in this generation of A-series Apple Silicon, on top of the increased battery size and the new cooling layer, they've made a really big difference. I also will say a couple of things quickly. The speakers, they sound incredible. I don't know what Apple's doing here or how they're able to achieve such good audio performance out of a phone, but they are very impressive. And the microphones, well, Apple's got this new studio mic array inside of the 16 Pro Max, and I did think that it would be a gimmick, but it does actually make a huge difference when trying to film specific things. Say I want to hear someone talking and not exactly pick up a ton of background noise, well, the 16 Pro Max is capable of singling out certain sounds and choosing which microphones would best suit the scene. And the best part is this can be changed completely after the fact, so you don't have to think about what you're doing when you're actually doing it. And so this is kind of like the perfect situation to test these microphones because I'm in an area where it's super windy. So this is what it's like recording regularly on the 16 Pro Max. And then this is what happens when I switch it to in frame. You can see that some of the audio from the background is not as, prevalent, it's not as windy. And then when I switch it over to the actual studio setting, it does sound a bit better as well. And it just does a little bit of a better job at making my voice the center of attention and gets rid of a lot of the wind noise and stuff like that in the background. Sometimes it could sound a little bit overprocessed, but I like that you have the option because built-in noise removal is something that is genuinely a tool and something that I will use. And also in my last video, I mentioned the 120 FPS video capabilities. And of course, the S24 Ultra does shoot 120 frames per second. But I think that it's important to mention that the iPhone can do this with no visible quality degradation. Meaning that you could theoretically shoot everything in 120 frames per second and choose later which clips you want to be slowed down. I think that slow-mo is very cool for very specific scenarios because you can get a pretty cinematic look, you could do things like product shots and B-roll, and you can also film really fast-moving things and slow it down and almost stop them completely in time. I gotta give it to Apple though, because honestly, I didn't think this was a feature that I was gonna use, and since I've used it pretty much every single day. And I guess since we're here talking about the cameras, this is where for me, the 16 Pro Max starts to really go up a notch. So I've been posting a lot on my Instagram, and if you want to go ahead and follow me there, it's just at valismind. But one thing that I can appreciate about Apple is the optimization in these apps that developers like Meta bring to the table. I'm able to take pretty damn near lossless images inside of Instagram and apps like X, which is nice for posting stories or making quick video posts. And because of this, I've actually been doing it a lot more and have been enjoying making content on these other platforms. The best app that I've discovered though is an app called Kino, so shout out to my buddy Fenson from Gadjitsu for putting me on that. Kino lets you record in different codecs for compatibility. It also lets you choose your frame rate, and it shoots in the log format to get the best quality out of the iPhone. Though the one thing that Kino does that I haven't seen on any other app is actually bake in the LUT so that you don't need to do any work in post. You can shoot very high quality videos within the app and get a good cinematic look to your videos or shorts. And then Kino with the Rode Video Mic 2 and this tripod that I have, using the ultra wide sensor makes the iPhone kind of like a complete vlogging setup, and it's really easy to use, it's really easy to carry around, and I think the image coming out of this thing is honestly fantastic. Like, I could see myself seriously using this as a portable setup to take with me if I go to events or if I need to film day in the life content, because it's very easy, it's very compact, and I don't really have to worry about it. In terms of the actual functionality, what you're getting out of it is so easy to handle, and when it comes to filming, you don't have to worry about a bunch of settings. It's just kind of plug and play, and it's really nice. Now, in terms of the actual images on the iPhone, I won't spend too much time on this, but where the iPhone really does excel is when shooting in the RAW format. This will let you get the most detail that you can out of the sensor, especially the 48 megapixel ultra wide, since when using the camera app without RAW, you're actually limiting yourself to a maximum of 24 megapixels. The amount of detail in the ultra wide is impressive to me, and I went from not caring about it or using the ultra wide on any phone because of how bad it was in low light and how much the image falls apart, to it now being one of my go-to lenses. The 5x telephoto, of course, is still my favorite lens for shooting stills. Like I said, I took a lot of photos whilst we were out in Salem, and even did the edits on the phone as well using Lightroom, and for how far I was able to push it, it blew me away. Both the main sensors and the 5x telephoto are also just perfect, and now that Apple's allowed us to change undertones, this could be a really cool way to get a Fujifilm-like film simulation. And there's even creators out there like Tyler Stallman who've already started posting their undertone profiles so you can copy their image recipes and get their desired look. I know some people don't necessarily care about the cameras and their capabilities or will ever fully utilize them to the extent in which they can, but as someone working in social media, the 16 Pro Max is going to stay in my pocket alongside an Android device because of how much utility it actually brings to my everyday life. But I'll be honest, I've actually been finding the 16 Pro Max really hard to review. The thing is that you already know what to expect. And from watching other videos and other creators, there's nothing that I'm really going to be able to tell you that's gonna blow you away or sway you in any way on this device, because you probably know everything that's new. Though, I think that's a good thing. There is nothing negative that really sticks out, and in the last 2 weeks, this has been a very solid phone, and it has been my go-to. And it's the only one that I've bothered taking with me on my trip because I knew that I could just rely on it, especially for the cameras and battery life. And now that iOS 18 has RCS, when it comes to communicating with people like friends in the space, I found it to just be really convenient since I'm getting the best of both worlds. Now being able to use iMessage for my friends and family, and even use FaceTime to catch up whilst away and not worry about my cell phone plan with US roaming. I also like that I'm able to mirror my phone on my MacBook and get in-app notifications on macOS because it's helped me from staying distracted, and I can easily see what's going on without needing to pick up my phone and get sucked into an app like TikTok because I have no self-control. Now, I know that's not an iOS 18 exclusive feature, and I know that you can do phone mirroring on Windows, but the thing is, it just works really well. Like, I've had no issues integrating this, I've had no issues with it, and honestly, from a day-to-day perspective, it's been one of the easier phones that I've actually incorporated in my life. So I guess if I were to summarize, the 16 Pro Max is a fantastic phone. The performance is impressive, the capabilities it brings for me in my workflow are genuinely really nice to have. It's well built, it's able to maintain good temperature, and it has a solid battery life. It's also helped me stay connected with social media in ways that I wasn't really able to do before, and most importantly, it's made me more consistent, organized, and has actually been a time saver. All of these things I find value in. Therefore, I find value in the iPhone 16 Pro Max, at least for me. Would I switch to it? Well, I'm actually considering just carrying this phone along with the Pixel so that I get the best of both worlds and still have the fun, easy to use, really cool Android operating system in my disposal at all times. But I don't think the iPhone is going to be leaving my pocket anytime soon, and that's honestly just the truth. Anyways, if you found anything of value in this video or you just enjoyed it, a like and a sub to the channel goes a really long way. We're almost at 50,000 subscribers, which is just incredible, so thank you so much. And if you've watched all the way through, go ahead and drop a banana emoji in the comments down below so I know who the real ones are. And as always, I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.